effects activated, so we're ready to go.
Perfect. Okay, just let me know when to start.
Anytime, mate. Anytime.
Okay. Welcome, Card Talk fans, new and old alike. It is one of your hosts, Ted Bannock here, and joining me as always is
Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
just along for the ride. Today on Card Talk, we are going to be doing sort of a new player or beginner video where we're going to be covering some of the rules of the game. And the team here at Card Talk thought this would kind of help mostly some new players who might be struggling understanding some of the keywords or quite possibly might be misreading how to play keywords, would help you understand more about them and apply them correctly to your game.
Yeah, and when we were discussing this, it turned out that we should just start at the beginning. Instead of just taking keywords that are obscure or aren't well written for new players to come into, or veteran players that haven't played the cycle before, would start at the beginning and would work our way through. So, to start off, what is our first keyword that we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so Grant and I are going to start today by just reviewing some of the keywords, as he mentioned, sort of out of the core box and the first couple cycles that you'll see. And we're going to talk about the first keywords that appear on player cards. So you're going to see these keywords on heroes, you're going to see them on player cards that you have in your deck or in play in front of you. And the first keyword that we're going to discuss today is the ranged keyword.
Yep, so as you can see, I have two heroes here, Bard and Legolas, both with the ranged keyword. Now, ranged is a term that is generally only used in multiplayer. There are a few cards that we can get to later that use the ranged keyword, but for the purposes of this, it's generally for multiplayer purposes. It allows another player to help attack enemies engaged with your partner or one of the other people at your table.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what most people don't know about this keyword is they're confused. I know I had some confusion when I first started playing, and there's two ways for a ranged character such as Legolas, as you see here, that we have on the table out of the core box. The way that the ranged keyword can be used. So the first way that the ranged keyword can be used is, if you notice, Grant has the first player token in this sort of example we have set up here, and my deck on the right side with the dwarves has this cornered orc engaged. And on Grant's turn, Grant, you could initiate an attack using the ranged keyword, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So if he wanted to, he could go ahead and exhaust his Legolas character, for example, and Bard. Yep. And he could have both characters, since they both have the ranged keyword, attack my cornered orc, which would, in this scenario, um, kill the cornered orc because of his low health and defense. It's calculated just like a regular attack, so he would be attacking for 6 versus the 1 defense of the orc, therefore doing 5 damage. And then also, if you count Bard's ability, which references making a ranged attack, the enemy gets -2 defense. He'd actually have no defense and take 6 damage.
Yep, Troy, is the audio better now? You said there was a lot of static. How's that? But
We
that,
having some
yeah, Troy's just,
technical issues.
well, Troy's just said that the audio isn't great. There's a lot of static. He's just confirmed that it sounds much better now. So that's great. So yeah, that's basically the way to make a ranged attack if you're the first player. The second way you can make a ranged attack, if you're a first player or not, and you haven't declared attacks yet. So say I'd made my attacks and we didn't have enough to kill, say,
Yep. So we'll just kind of set up a new example here where it's my attack phase. Is that what you're getting at, right?
Um, yeah, basically because I wouldn't be able to kill, say, this Orc War Chief with Bard and Legolas because of his. It would take 9 to kill. So if, say, Ted had Thorin attacking the war chief, I could then use Legolas and Bard, which would help kill this war chief. You don't actually have to be. It doesn't actually have to be your combat phase when you're attacking with ranged characters. You can optionally help them when they're making an attack.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right, Grant. So if it's my turn on the right side of the screen here with Dane and Thorin Stonehelm, if I was declaring an attack on my turn, and I added up their values, which in this case are these two characters here, that add up to 5, it's not enough to kill the Orc War Party. So as Grant said, he can choose to add the value of his ranged characters onto my attack, and they all attack with all of their values as one attack.
Yeah. Now, some people may get confused, but when making a ranged attack, say if I'd already attacked with Bard and Legolas against this war chief and done 3 damage to him, or 5 damage given Bard's ability, then it comes to your turn. If I had readying, would they still be able to participate in the attack to kill that war party?
Yes, yeah. Per the normal rules of the game, each player is allowed to declare an attack against one enemy per phase. So, for example, on my turn, when I declare an attack, your characters can join in since I initiated the attack, and then sort of vice versa. When it's your turn, you can also initiate an attack against that enemy. But you can only each player. What's confusing is each player can only have one initiation against each enemy per turn. So, and that kind of gets into like the more in-depth rules of attacking,
Yeah,
which can be confusing, but that's what ranged plays into it very heavily.
yeah, and that's why I thought I'd bring it up, because that could be something that people get confused on
Yeah.
quite easily.
Yep. So to my understanding, the statute, like the rules say, it's one initiation per player. So
Per
if
enemy.
I per enemy, yep. So if I initiate an attack, um, on my turn against this guy, Grant, then you can either join in with your ranged characters or initiate your own ranged attack entirely against the same enemy if you want to do it that way.
Yep,
If there was some other benefit.
yep. But for example, if say Ted had readying on Dane and Thorin, he wouldn't then be able to relaunch an attack against the same enemy he has attacked.
Right. So it's exactly right. So, for example, I'll put this unexpected courage into play that we see here, and which if I had this, let's say I had this unexpected courage on Gimli, which attaches to a hero, and you can exhaust unexpected courage to ready the attached hero. So during the normal rules of the game, as soon as I send this card to back, Gimli is allowed to make an attack against this cornered orc. And I would therefore use Gimli's 2 attack to his 1 defense, and I would deal 1 damage. If I use the unexpected courage to ready Gimli, where he's now ready, and I'm still in my attack phase, I cannot exhaust Gimli to attack this enemy.
Because
That
you've already used your limit to initiate an attack against that enemy this turn.
exactly, Grant. So Gimli could, however, he could attack this Orc War Party. That would be within the rules of the game since he's ready, and I have not yet attacked the Orc War Party. But Gimli could not attack the cornered orc under that scenario.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered everything for ranged and the attack portion of the combat phase. So shall we
Yeah,
move on to?
we will. That's probably the most in-depth one. We covered the most complicated one first.
Yep, sounds about right. So next up we have Sentinel, and looking at the board, we only have one Sentinel character in play, which is Grimbeorn the Old. And Sentinel allows, just as ranged allows you to attack enemies engaged with another player, Sentinel allows you to defend um, enemies engaged with another player. So Grimbiorn could defend this cornered orc, for example, with seeing Ted has no ready heroes available to defend. Grimbiorn defends for him. The shadow cards go off as normal. Um, so if it says the defending player must say discard a resource, then that would target Ted. If it was the defending player has to discard an attachment, then I would have to discard the attachment for defending for Ted.
Yeah, so just to kind of show you what that means, I'll go ahead and generate this other cornered orc. Let's say we were actually making an attack, and this was the shadow card that it was dealt in this scenario. So the enemy attacks me. I have no ready characters. As you can see, all my characters are exhausted here. But as we have highlighted, Grimnjord could defend using the Sentinel keyword, even though the enemy is attacking me. And we flip over the shadow card, and the shadow text says the attacking enemy gets +1, +2 instead if the defending character is damaged. And that defending character in the circumstance is Grimbjorn the Old, because he's the one who's actually defending the attack.
Yep, so he only gets +1 because Grimbiorn does not have any damage. Therefore, he's attacking for 3 with Grimbiorn's defense of 3. No other values are being taken into account other than the normal rules of combat for these defenses. So the shadow effect goes off, then that alters the cornered orc's attack power, and then that gets subtracted from Grimbiorn's defensive power. It's just the standard rules of combat, only another player is able to defend for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a different shadow card that references me as the player, but I can't think of any off the top of my head. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Here's a perfect. Okay.
Oh, you got one?
Yes, I think so. So again, so let's say the shadow card in this case, the shadow effect with this card right here, flipping it over. The shadow text says defending player raises the threat by 1 for each location he controls. Now this is a very specific card to a specific scenario. I don't actually have any locations I control that's very scenario specific. But let's just say, for example, it said the defending player raises the threat by 2, even though Grimbjorn is the defending character. My team, me as the player, Ted, is the defending character. So or the defending hero, or player rather, excuse me. And I would raise my threat accordingly, according to the value.
Yes. So those are the two differences between defending player and defending character. And I think that's pretty much all we have to say about Sentinel.
Yeah, that's really it. There's a couple player cards, as you mentioned, Grant, that refer to range and Sentinel characters, but those cards are just checking if the character has the keyword.
Yeah, they don't necessarily do anything from that key, like for that keyword, other than check that you have it.
Right. So
next
we'll move on. Yeah.
We have
Next.
the restricted keyword.
Mm-hmm.
Now, each character, as stated in the rules, can only have up to 2 restricted attachments. Now, there has been cards since the release of the rules that allow you to have more than 2 restricted attachments. But the restricted attachments are weaponry that you would expect to see. Like the Rivendell Blade on screen is a restricted attachment. There are some armors that are also restricted, which is what you would expect. The heavy gear, it is what it says on the tin, basically. You can only have 2, so you have to choose which 2 you want for your characters to have. As for this Rivendell Blade, it's got a restriction that it also has to be attached to a Noldor or Sylvan character. You can see it's restricted, and when it's attached, character makes an attack, that enemy gets -2 defense until the end of the phase. And then over on Ted's side, he has two restricted attachments brought out, the Dwarrowed Elf Axe and the Dwarven Axe. Now the Dwarven Axe is just attached to a hero, so it can go on any hero, it's restricted, but attached hero gets +1 attack. It has a secondary part that if the attached hero has the dwarf trait, that character gets +2 attack instead of just a normal +1. And the Dwarrowed Elf Axe is attached to a dwarf character. So it doesn't have to be a hero, it could just be any dwarf character and it gets +1 attack. And after the attached character makes an attack, you deal 1 damage to the defending enemy. So those are some types of restricted attachments. I have another attachment on here which isn't restricted, it's just limited 1 per player. Well, 1 per character I should say, which is the Rivendell Bow. Now again, it's attached to a Noldor or Sylvan character or to Aragorn. It's limited 1 per player, and attached character gains ranged. If attached character has a printed ranged keyword like Legolas, he gets +1 attack during a ranged attack.
It's really funny. So yeah, this Rivendell bow is actually a great example, Grant, where it actually gives the character range. It gives the character a keyword. This card, funny story, I played this card wrong for many, many years. This card came out in the second cycle, and if you read the bottom text of it, it says, if the character has ranged already, so for example, if you put it on Legolas, who already has the keyword, he gets +1 during a ranged attack. And a ranged attack is specifically the scenarios that we mentioned earlier in the video just a few minutes ago. I thought they got +1 attack all the time, but this card specifically says +1 during a ranged attack only. So, and ranged attacks, as we went over, are when you're attacking another enemy engaged with another player. I think the last thing I'll point out before we move on is if you look at Gimli, he has 2 restricted items. If you want to play a third one, that is perfectly within the rules. Let's say I drew this warrior sword, and let's say I'd much prefer to have it on Gimli than one of my other ones. You can choose to play it, and then when you do, since he's beyond his limit of 2, excluding this 3 Hunters card, he's beyond his limit of 2 per the rules, you can just choose and send 1 to your discard pile.
Yep. And just going over what Ted's just talked about, the cards that allow you to have restricted attachment, more than the 2 restricted attachments, are cards like Force of 3 Hunters, which basically you build decks without any allies, and you can play an extra restricted attachment for each hero. The other card is an attachment known as Golden Belt, which is limit 1 per hero, and the attached hero can have 1 additional restricted attachment. So with these 2 in conjunction with your normal 2 range, your normal 2 restricted, you can go up to 4 restricted attachments per hero.
Yeah, so it's quite possible to bend the rules. If the rules on the card will always supersede the rules. If a card allows you to do something, it breaks the normal rules of the game through the card's special effect.
Yes. So I think that's everything to cover for player keywords.
Yeah, those are the 3 that you're going to see right out of the sort of core box and throughout the first cycle. So we're going to move on to a couple keywords that you're going to see on encounter cards, on scenario, treachery, enemy cards, out of the core set and the first 3 cycles of the game. The Mirkwood cycle, Khazad-dûm cycle, and the third one? Shadow?
Heirs of Numenor.
Yeah, Heirs of Numenor.
Shadows.
Against the Shadow cycle. Thank you, Grant. So the first one we're going to cover is Surge.
Yes, and when a card with Surge is revealed from the encounter deck, you have to then reveal an additional card from the encounter deck to cover that Surge. It does not, however, trigger if it is added to the staging area, but only when revealed.
Yes, that is an important distinction. So if you are revealing cards from the encounter deck during the normal encounter phase, and one of those revealed cards is a surge, you will essentially be drawing an extra card to replace it.
Yeah, and that goes for any time a quest card says, um, when revealed, reveal an additional encounter card per player, or add and reveal any discarded enemies. That is during the normal stages of the game. Even if you're in the combat phase and Legolas was able to clear out the quest stage after questing, you would then have to do the when revealed effect on that card, and it would still count as the normal um, time in the game to get those cards.
Yep. And just to show people a quick example of Surge, let's say Grant and I were playing this scenario here, and we were on the stage where we were committing our characters to questing, and we were revealing cards. We would reveal this first card here, which is the Necromancer's Pass, this second card here, which is the Surging Crows. Now, usually that would be one card per player, one each for me and Grant. But since this has the Surge keyword, I would then reveal a third card before I stop revealing cards and calculate how much we quest for.
Yep, and because of that, we have to add that additional enemy. There are ways around Surge, like this Eastern Crow. If you have, say, Phelan, that does a damage as it's revealed, it doesn't get a chance to trigger its keyword.
Yep, a couple player cards can mitigate or react from Surge. Um, so there's a couple tricks players can have up their sleeves, which is very cool.
Yep.
But that's basically just kind of how it works. It's an extra card. It's a free card for the encounter deck. Think of it that way.
Yeah. And then the next keyword I think we've got is Doomed.
We'll do Doom next, sure. So let's see if I have one in. Is there a Doom card in this
Troy, what
scenario?
exactly can't you hear? Is it me or is it Ted? He's saying that there's you can only hear one of the well. I'm trying to adjust the volume to not incorporate so much static.
Sure.
We can always redo the audio of the first part of the show again once we've got the audio settings correct.
Yeah, that's really bizarre. I have the right microphone settings.
I think it's me. Obviously, with
Okay.
us having to reformat my computer, I've got to reset all my settings again. So
Could be.
not everything is perfect as it was.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Right. So as we were saying, doomed. Probably the most hated keyword in the entire game.
Yeah. Yeah. Doomed is a bummer. So I will go ahead and see if I cannot find a card with Doom. There's not really any in this particular scenario, but yeah, you grabbed a player card with Doomed,
Yes.
which new players may or may not have, depending on which cards they've purchased.
Yeah. A player card with doomed essentially acts the same way as doomed from the encounter deck. Only you get to choose whether or not you want to make everybody raise their threat, as in this case by 2 for deep knowledge. The player cards have some interesting effects, like this deep knowledge, Doom 2, and then each player draws 2 cards.
Yeah, I found one.
You've got the outlying homestead.
Yep. So let's say in this example we flipped over. Well, let's say we flipped over these cards. One card, surge card, and our third card was this location, the outlying homestead. It's a location, but it does have the doomed one, so we would raise our threats. Both players would raise our threat by the doom value, which is 1.
Yep. And there are cards that help with doomed, but generally speaking, that Doomed is going to stack up. There's You've got threat mitigation by events, player cards, and a whole other host of ways to get around it. But generally speaking, you want to keep your threat low, otherwise you'll be engaging enemies left, right, and center.
Yeah. But that's all Doom does is it comes into play. Both players raise their threat by the Doom value, and then it really has no other effect. Like this outlying homestead, for example, that I have highlighted, this it would function like a regular location. The Doom keyword doesn't do anything special after the threat raise.
Yeah.
And again, it also only happens if the card is revealed from the encounter deck.
Yes.
So if an effect said search the
Search your
uh,
encounter deck and add a location to the staging area. You
thank
would
you. Yep.
you would not trigger the doomed keyword unless it said search and add and reveal a location to the staging area, and you pick this one, then you would have to then trigger the doomed.
Exactly. So only when you're revealing it, not when you're adding it. Well put.
Yeah. And do we have another?
Uh, yeah. So the next keyword that we have is going to be the guarded keyword.
Ah, fun. The guarded.
I'm gonna grab. So I'll actually grab a card from the core set that players will see.
Yeah, Gandalf's map.
Yep.
So basically, when a card with guarded is revealed from the encounter deck, you then have to reveal a card from the encounter deck to basically guard the card with it. So later in the last couple of cycles, we've gained guarded player cards as we have with Doomed. Now they are generally classed as guarded by enemy or location. Whereas the objective guarded cards that you get from scenarios are generally just guarded by anything the encounter deck can put out, whether that be location, treachery, or enemy. And basically, once they're free of their encounter card, you can then generally claim the objective.
Yeah. So I'll actually grab one from.
There's the Hunt for Gollum one.
Yeah. So here's one for example. I'll set these cards aside. So this Signs of Gollum card that I have highlighted, which is from the first AP in the Mirkwood cycle, has the guarded keyword. So if this card was revealed, so let's say Grant and I were playing, for example, let's say, I'll just kind of stack the deck here. Let's say, I'll put these aside out of play. Let's say the first card Grant and I reveal is this Goblin Sniper, regular card. The second card we reveal is this Signs of Gollum. This is guarded. So what'll happen is I'll just reveal the next card from the encounter deck, and in this case I reveal the Treachery. So what would happen is this Treachery would resolve. When revealed, deal 1 damage to each exhausted character. The Treachery would then be discarded after we suffer the effects, and then the Signs of Gollum is no longer guarded. In another example, if we had revealed this location, the Gladden Fields, the guarded objective, would be attached to the location, and then if we chose to travel there and explore the location next turn, when we explore the Gladden Fields, we would then free up the objective.
Yep.
And it can also be guarded by enemies, and that's the same case. If it's guarded by an enemy, you simply have to engage the enemy and attack it and defend it like normal.
Or just kill it in any way you can.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can play effects if you can kill the enemy with direct damage by playing a Gandalf card or some other effect. As long as you kill the enemy, that card is no longer being guarded by the enemy.
There you go. There's one from my deck. Hands upon the bow. It would still be in the staging area, and you can kill the enemy quite easily with this, because obviously you don't actually have to engage. So if there was an effect preventing you from engaging enemies, you can do it this way.
Yeah, hands upon the bow allows a ranged character to make an attack against a enemy in the staging area.
Yes.
So it sort of breaks the normal rules of engagement and would let you attack this enemy with Legolas with that card effect, and then if you kill it, you will free the objective.
Yes. Um, and I think that's all for the first box for keywords.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything that you're going to see in the core sets and in the
Shadows of Mirkwood.
Shadows of Mirkwood cycle.
So,
Once we move on to the Kaza Doom box, we get I guess if we cover victory cards are in there, I believe.
victory cards are actually in the core box as well, which
Yeah. So
um,
it's kind of a keyword, but kind of not. But we'll cover it real briefly here. So if you look at this Gladden Fields, it has a victory 3, and this there you go, Hummer Horns has a victory 5. Basically, once these cards are, if it's a location, if you explore it, or if it's an enemy such as the Hummer Horns, and you kill it, instead of the card going to the discard pile, it's set aside in its own special victory pile.
yeah, and this is not to be assumed to be removed from play. This is just added to the victory display. Um, the out of play area is something completely different. It's where it's been removed from the game permanently. There are cards in the later cycles that affect victory display, and the cards in the victory display.
Sure, that is an important distinction. The victory pile is its own separate pile. It's not removed from game, and it's not the discard pile. It's the victory pile. But the cards are essentially set aside in their own place, and if your discard pile has to reshuffle in the encounter deck at any point, the victory cards are not part of that reshuffle. They've been removed from the regular deck.
Yes.
The victory points also the number there's rules to score your game, and if you get more victory points, they deduct from your score
Right.
essentially,
Um,
which is just an optional part of the game.
yeah. The general way to score a game, if you are interested, is the number of rounds that's taken to the number of complete rounds is taken to win the game, the combined threat of all players involved, the damage on heroes, the cost of dead heroes, and the victory points. So, for example, let's say we had 5 rounds, so 5 completed rounds, there's 50 points. Then our combined threat is at the moment 65. So that would be 115 points. We have no damage and no dead heroes, so that's still 115. And our victory points, if we were to add
Let's
both the Hummer Horns and the Gladden Fields into the victory display, that would then deduct the 8 points from that 115 down to 107.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the higher the victory number, the lower your score. Otherwise, just make sure that when you explore a location with victory or kill an enemy, you set them aside because you sort of they're usually a challenging card, and it's to mark that you've defeated it, and you don't have to defeat it a second time.
Yeah, and in this quest you have a really nasty enemy that you don't want to see more than a couple of times, which is the dreaded Hill Troll.
Oh yeah, nasty, nasty stuff.
Um, and I've known myself that I'm forgetting to put the Hill Troll back into the victory display when I've killed it. I mean, this isn't the actual one from this scenario. This is just one I've generated from one of the new print on demands because it's got cost 1 there. So I've generated the wrong one, but you can still see his stat line is pretty nasty. But that's basically victory in
Yeah.
a nutshell. So
So we got just a couple more from you, and the keywords to go over, and the rest of these keywords are pretty specific to cards, either usually in a scenario, but
yes,
a couple of them do repeat on multiple scenarios. So the first one we'll cover is the ambush keyword,
yes.
which is on. Let me see here. I think it's
It's a
on.
red
It's like a
one. I've got one card here with ambush.
the wild bear.
Can you guess why?
There it is.
Right. So when
So I'll just make a note real quick before you start, Grant. That so this keyword to date, with only one unreleased AP, only appears in this scenario. I can't
yes,
think of another scenario. It's unique to Road to Rivendell,
yes,
which is part of the Khazad-dûm cycle. So you're probably only going to see this keyword one time.
yes. And this is probably, I think, one of the better keywords because it makes the game that little bit more challenging. Um, as you can see, it states after this enemy enters play, each player must make an engagement check against the enemy. So, for example, I have a threat of 31. So, with me being first player, it would check to me. Since I do not have a 34 threat, it then checks against Ted. Ted, however, does have a threat of 34, so it would come down and immediately engage Ted.
Yep.
Now, not all enemies have this forced. After Wild Bear engages a player, it makes an immediate attack. Some have discard an attachment, discard resources. Um, so when the Wild Bear comes down and engages, it would make an immediate attack against Ted.
Yep. And I'd follow the normal rules of combat. I would have to declare defender, or if we were playing in this scenario, Grant could declare his Sentinel defender and have Grimbjorn defend for me.
Yes.
And then the enemy will again attack in the regular attack phase. So because of the its forced effect combined with the ambush keyword, it gets to attack twice in one turn.
Yeah, but it's only when it engages. So if the Wild Bear doesn't go back to the staging area, it will stay engaged and then it will just follow the normal rules of combat each turn. It's only when it first comes in and checks against the player.
Yep, exactly right. So that's ambush. You're only going to see it in Road to Rivendell. It does have the rules insert. It's actually printed on the card what it does. So that one, hopefully this clarifies some things about it, but it is right on the card if you need to go back and revisit it.
Yep.
So.
So what's the next keyword we have there, Ted?
All right. Next keyword, Grant, we have is we'll probably cover two of these at the same time because they're both in one single scenario in the Khazad-dûm cycle, and that is the keywords regenerate and we'll cover indestructible.
And if I remember rightly, they are both on Durin's Bane.
They sure are.
And I will just generate that in there now. There we
I
go.
think is regenerate only appears in. I don't know if it's in any other scenario.
It's in Water in the Water.
Oh,
It's
you're right.
in this one. I can't remember if it's in any others, but I definitely know it's in them too because the Watcher has regenerate on it.
I forgot about the Watcher, Grant. Why don't we bring him into play too?
Okay, I'll generate them in. Just
Unless I beat you to it.
well, if you can, you probably
I'm not
will.
gonna. I'm not gonna. Got it. Yes.
Ooh,
What the?
I got the wrong Watcher.
You got? Ah, I win. I win. This is the one we're talking about.
Mine looks cooler.
Yeah. So you'll see these two again if you're playing through the Khazad-dûm cycle. We'll quickly go through regenerate. So the Watcher here has regenerate 2, and Durin's Bane on the left has regenerate 3. And it's been a while because since regenerate doesn't appear in too many scenarios, as I mentioned.
Regenerate happens at the end of the phase, so you go through refresh, and then at the end of the round, they heal up points equal to their regenerate value. So Durin's
Right.
Bane
Okay.
heals up 3 points of damage, and the Watcher heals up 2 points of damage
Right.
at the end of
So
the round.
If I was having a real bad day and fighting all these enemies at one time, which is impossible, um, but
Considering they're all from different scenarios,
they're
except
all
for
from different scenarios. Yep. If this was a scenario, let's say I had attacked this Watcher here and done 5 points of damage. I didn't kill him. When the turn ends and we go to the refresh phase, he will heal his 2 regenerate value and only be at 3 damage.
yeah, and then that regeneration does continue each game, each turn. The indestructible keyword basically means that the enemy cannot die. Regardless of how much damage you put on the enemy to his max hit points, he will still, or it will still come at you and hit you with every, like a truck.
Yep. So let's say Grant and I we put an impressive 500 damage somehow on Durin's Bane. If we were fighting Durin's Bane and we had 500 points of damage on him of his 27 hit points, because he's indestructible, he will not be discarded from play. Usually, indestructible enemies are unique, and the scenario will have some type of effect, or it'll specify a way for the enemy to lose indestructible, generally.
Yeah, likes of this Watcher in the Water that I generated in before. He has the indestructible, but he's also immune to player card effects. But there is a I think you just got to get through the doors of Durin to win the scenario for that one. You can't actually kill the Watcher.
Yeah, I think so. We just did this one too on another past stream. But yeah. So that's essentially indestructibles. The enemy can't be killed, but they have some effect. So, for example, this dark pit that Grant has generated. This gives you, if you read it, it says. Refresh action exhaust X characters, maximum of 3 you control, to discard the top X cards of the deck of your deck. If all discarded cards have a higher combined printed cost than the remaining hit points of Durin's Bane, you would discard him from play. So in this case, he doesn't lose indestructible, but this dark pit allows you to kill this specific enemy.
Yep, and because he's got 500 damage on him,
Sure.
me discarding the cost of 3. 3 is definitely more than the printed hit points of what
Sure.
was left on Durin's Bane.
Let's say realistically, maybe we did 25 points
Yeah,
of damage.
okay, so 25, I then discard a cost of 3. That puts Durin's Bane at 28 damage, which then triggers the Dark Pit and the Balrog Falls.
He falls into the dark pit.
Hi Matt, no, we're not actually playing through Khazad-dûm. We are busy discussing keywords.
Hey, yeah, thanks for joining us. Yep. Our stream today is keywords for new players. We're making our way through the list just to specify a couple things. So thanks for joining us. But yeah, we're not continuing our normal stream this week. We're just trying to clarify a few things, and we're making our way through the list.
Okay, so next on the list after Regenerate and Indestructible?
All right, so the next we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 more keywords before we wrap up our stream today, and all 6 of these keywords appear in the 3rd cycle, either in the Heirs of Numenor box or in one of the following APs. And the first one we're going to do, we'll cover is, let's go ahead and do archery first, since archery is right out of the. Archery is probably the easiest one.
Yeah, archery is the easiest one to cover because it is in so many scenarios, and I think everybody now can understand where archery comes in.
Yeah, let's see here. Trying to pull up an enemy that has archery from Heirs of Numenor, if I can be impressive. Got it.
You got one?
Yes. Okay, so we'll kind of clean up some of our board state here. All these ridiculous enemies we have out in play. Let's see here. Get rid of some of these. Some of these. Okay, great. So let's take a look at this Umbar Assassin. He has archery 2. And the way that archery works, enemies will have this keyword, is at the very beginning of the combat phase, the players as a whole team have to assign archery damage to any characters equal to the value.
Yeah.
So in this example, we have archery 2. I could go ahead and take all 2 points onto Dane Ironfoot if I wanted to. For example, that would...
Or with it being a 2-player game, we could each assign 1 damage to split that damage up.
Yep.
Archery isn't like you must assign 2 points of damage to one character. It's among characters you control, like on the board. All the players could assign 1 damage each to each of their characters for this example. Or if we wanted to, yes, we could assign like the 2 points of damage to one character. For example, if Gandalf was in play, we could assign the 2 points of damage to Gandalf because he was going away at the end of the round.
Yep. And they don't have to be the heroes. They can be the characters. So, for example, I have this soldier of Dal Amroth in play. Grant could still assign 1 damage to Legolas, and I could choose to assign 1 damage to the Dal Amroth. And again, if they were to take damage equal to their hit points, that character would be killed like normal. It functions just like regular damage.
So if I said I didn't want to take any damage, and he assigned both the points of damage to the Dal Amroth soldier, he would die.
Yep. And the archery occurs when they're in the staging area, or when they're engaged with you. So if Grant was engaged with this Umbar Assassin, the archery value would still trigger every turn the enemy is in play.
Yes, some cards don't have archery only when engaged with a player. That only, I think it's the Corsair Warship from the Dream Chaser cycle.
Yeah, a few cards have situational archery.
Yeah.
There are some cards in the game will increase or decrease archery value, and the value is just how much damage you take. That can change depending on the enemy.
So as I've just generated in this Corsair Warship, you can see while Corsair Warship is in the staging area, it cannot be damaged and gains archery 4. So if this was a situation we had the Umbar Assassin on the Corsair Warship, we would be taking 6 archery this turn. 4 from the Warship and 2 from the Umbar Assassin.
Yep, they stack, and again, the 6 damage would be spread out amongst all players, amongst all characters.
Right.
So
how's that now, Matt? I know we've been having some technical issues with my sound. Is that any better?
yeah, you sound fine on my own headset. Must be something with your PC settings, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to sort out as we're going through. Maybe this is another video for to go over with David once we get back.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But I think we're still covering the basics, even with you going back over what we've been saying.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, there's archery. We only got a couple more to go, so we'll just try to wrap things up. So other keywords that you'll see in the 3rd cycle is going to be, we'll cover these both kind of at the same time. The first one is battle, and the second one is siege. And they do a similar thing, but with different values and different stats on your characters. So let's see if I can... Let's see here. We'll set this aside out of play, of course, and I'm trying to think. Let's see here. I have to remember the name of a quest card. Or if you want to maybe load in one of the new cycle cards. Let's see here. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so this is a scenario you'll see from the Heirs of Numenor. This is into Athelion. And we'll go ahead and let's see here. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Great. So Grant has flipped over the Into Athelion card into 1B, and this has the battle keyword, and the rules here are explained on the card in parentheses. It says characters use attack instead of willpower when questing. So this will change some of the mechanics of the game, and when you choose to commit characters to quest, meaning usually you count their willpower. So Legolas has 1 willpower, Bard has 2 willpower. Because we're doing a battle, they will instead count their attack instead of their willpower. So let's say this was our staging area, Grant, and you had maybe committed those 2 characters, we'll say? Yep. So let's say Grant commits those characters to the quest. We're going to count their attack values each as 3. And then we have, well, let's say this was our setup, right? Why don't you go ahead and reveal a card, right? Just do reveal another card. Great. Okay, so let's say we had this Southern Company, which gets +2 threat and +2 attack. Well, the current quest card has Battle or Siege, which it does. So this would have 3 threat, would have 4. Grant sent a total of 6 questing with his 2 attackers. In this scenario, yeah, if we have Keldor, he also reads, well, Keldor's in the staging area, he's committed to the quest. And since he also has a 2 attack value, in this scenario, we'd actually be counting 3, 6, 8 over the 7. We would make 1 progress on the Athelion Road.
Yep. And that's basically battle questing. It is questing with your attack instead of your willpower.
Yep.
And the same is for Siege. Instead of committing characters with your willpower, it's with your defensive power. So, for example, I would then have 5 questing on Siege with Bard and Grimbeorn for a total of 5. You add your defensive values to the quest.
Yep, same thing. So you do not count the character's willpower. You instead use the character's defense when calculating how much you've sent on the quest, your total defense versus the threat, and that will determine how much progress you make on the location and how much you make on the quest card equivalently. So it certainly changes up the game a lot.
Yeah, Matt, I know what you mean. Matt's just saying he wishes there was a tactics attachment that could give a quest the battle keyword. The Train for War event is close, but really would be better to have the option for multiple rounds. Well,
just play Hama. Well, just play Hama, Matt. Problem solved.
Well, doesn't the grappling hook also do it?
Grappling hook lets you have 1 character use their attack value, so it's like a partial battle. Have we had grappling hook on a Card Talk episode yet? I don't know if we've covered that.
I certainly say no, we have not had grappling hook.
Yeah. It's
not a card I've actually ever played with.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it's so that's kind of Battle and Siege in a nutshell. So if you're playing this scenario, it helps to kind of have decks prepared for Battle and Siege. But the quests are very tricky because sometimes in a scenario, the first stage is a battle and the second stage has no keyword. So you might go to the second stage and you might go from using your attack power to questing to your regular willpower. So the scenarios are very tricky in this cycle. So make sure to pay attention to which scenarios have keywords printed on them when you change them from stage 1 to 2 and 3.
Yeah, and generally it's a good idea to build your decks for these. Don't go in blind just thinking your normal deck will work, because 9 times out of 10 it will probably take you 100 attempts and you'll still get nowhere.
Yeah. So hopefully that helps clarify Battle and Siege. Relatively simple to explain, but hard to apply. A couple more to go from the Heirs of Numenor against the Shadow Cycle. We'll cover Prowl next, which is an enemy keyword. And Prowl, the last ones that we're going to cover, there's 3 left. They're all going to be scenario specific. So this Prowl keyword appears in the scenario called the Druidan Forest, which is the second or third AP?
Second AP.
Second AP out of the cycle. So we'll go ahead and load up that scenario. And we'll go ahead and pull an enemy out with, there we go, the Druidan Hunter. Man, these guys. So, and I'll actually need a refresher on this because I believe that the Prowl only targets one. It's just one resource total, right? Not like per player. I don't actually remember.
It's been a while since I've. Let's have a look.
Yeah, I know the other one's all by heart, but this, the Prowl keyword, we're going to double check on this one.
When an encounter card with the Prowl keyword is revealed from the encounter deck, the players as a group must discard the specified number of resources from their hero's resource pools. If the players do not have enough resources to match the specific value, they must discard as many resources as they can. That's what the rules insert I have states over the Prowl keyword.
Yep, so let's just say that we were committed to the quest and we revealed this Druidan Hunter. It has Prowl 1, so that means collectively as a group we have to lose 1 resource from one of our characters, so I could choose to discard one off of Mary.
Yep, and if you notice on this Druidan Hunter, X is the number of heroes in play with no resources. That means his Prowl basically enhances his archery damage.
Yeah, because the more heroes that don't have resources, the higher his archery. And here's an example where the archery value is not printed, it's determined by an X value. So it could change the amount of damage you have to assign. So Prowl, again, easy to explain, tough to deal with, but again, it can be from any hero. So let's say I have absolutely no resources, mine are all spent. When the Prowl character is revealed from the deck, Grant could discard a resource off one of his characters, and that would meet the requirement.
Yes. And I think that's pretty much how you deal with Prowl.
Yep, you'll see it only in the Druidan Forest pack.
So what's the next keyword then?
The next keyword we're going to cover is the Underworld keyword, which is actually from the first AP from this cycle, which is right before this quest. It is called the Steward's Fear, and one I actually enjoy to take out of the box every once in a while.
I actually enjoy the Steward's Fear. It's got so much replay value.
Yeah, it does.
And then the Nightmare adds so much more to that on top.
Haven't played the Nightmare version yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
The Nightmare version adds such it's like another level of challenge to it.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay, so if you're new to this Steward's Fear, you haven't played it before, it has the Underworld keyword, which the scenario instructions will tell you to, during setup on 1A, create the Underworld deck. So follow the instructions out of the box. It's basically a collection of enemies that go into their own separate deck.
Yep, and you also have clue objectives that are also in this Underworld deck.
Yep.
So, for example, we shuffle that up. Wasn't shuffle. And this is Underworld X is the number of players in the game. So we have 1 player in the game. So it gets 1 card. Once that 4th star is explored, we then reveal the Underworld cards that are underneath said location.
Yep.
So, for example, when the 4th stars explode, we then have revealed this Lost Ark Bandit. and that's basically Underworld. There are cards in this encounter set that add um, more Underworld cards to in play, like the sewers. Place the top card of the Underworld deck face down underneath the active location if able. So that would be, say we got that prior to exploring with the Lost Ark Bandit, and we explored it, we would then have the Pickpocket and the Bandit to deal with.
Yep. Yeah, as soon as you explore the active location with Underworld, um, the enemies or cards underneath it get put it into the staging area. And then two, when an Underworld card is revealed, so if we revealed the sewers, Grant had done the when revealed effect, but the location itself has Underworld 1, which means that a Underworld card from the Underworld deck will be put underneath it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just kind of it. So this is a real fun scenario. You'll see lots of cards that have the Underworld value, some treacheries,
and the most dreaded card in the entire Underworld deck. He's back. He's come
oh,
back.
yeah, we used him as the archery example. He's actually part of the scenario, and he is in the Underworld deck.
I think
so
he's just part of the quest box. I think he's in the entire Heirs of Numenor adventure packs.
yeah, he reoccurs.
Yeah, there's some quests which he isn't in, but he's in a fair few of them.
Yeah, anyone that involves like a city, he's part of the brigand. There's a whole deck of like brigand and rogues. Yeah.
But no, that's the Underworld keyword. And do we have any more for this session on keywords?
Yep, the very last one that we'll cover, just to sort of do it in cycles here, is the villagers keyword, which appears also in a kind of... I enjoy playing this scenario. It's the encounter at a Mondin scenario, which is the third AP. So if you're new to the game or new to the cycle, you're going to see the trend here where they sort of introduce new keywords as the packs have come out. So you kind of get some of them remain, like archery remains in a lot of them, battle siege appear in a lot of them, but they also got new unique keywords. Ooh, okay. So in this scenario, villagers are represented. I think the rules say a damage token technically,
no,
but
it's resource tokens while they're alive, and then when they get placed on dead villagers, it's the damage token.
Ah, very good. Okay, so thank you, Grant.
Yeah. Yeah. So this scenario is probably one of the easiest to deal with. Ryan, can you turn that down, please, son? I'm recording. Ryan, turn that down. I'm recording, son.
Yeah, so villagers is unique to this scenario. You're only going to see it in this scenario. And as you see, it's got this location, the burning farmhouse that we have highlighted, has villagers 4, which means it gets 4 resource tokens to represent villagers that are alive in the thematic sense.
Yes.
These are people that are trapped, they're being attacked by orcs, or they're in a dangerous building, and you're trying to save them. And what happens in this scenario is when you explore a location that has live villagers on it, they get moved from the card to the rescued villagers objective card, which will start in play, and you'll take that out at the beginning of the scenario per the instructions.
Yep. And certain cards say move X villagers to the dead villagers objective because you failed to save them. However, there are times where you can literally walk through this quest, and I've seen it myself where I've had maybe 2 dead villagers in 13, 14, 15 rescued villagers. This quest got a considerable buff when the Nightmare came out.
Ooh, I'm excited. I haven't played Nightmare yet, but I'm waiting to get there.
Well, here you can see it on the quest, next to the quest card. You are playing Nightmare mode. Gulod cannot take damage unless there are at least 15 progress tokens on Protect the Villagers.
Oh my.
Set up, place 1 villager token on the rescued villagers, and at the beginning of the quest phase, either discard 1 villager token from rescued villagers or reveal an extra encounter card.
Wow. Okay.
So
Fun.
you can see that just with that alone, it's made this entire quest that little bit more entertaining.
Yep. So let's say we had rescued all four of these, for example, or we'll say to kind of give you a taste of both. The Burning Farmhouse has an example. It says at the end of the round, discard one villager token from Burning Farmhouse. It's its forced effect. So, for example, let's say they were all four.
Let's say we managed to took 2 turns to get through, so we lost one villager.
Yep.
So when we explored Burning Farmhouse at the end of the round, we had to discard a villager token in order to from the Burning Farmhouse. So they get represented by the damage tokens on the dead villagers.
Yep.
We managed to successfully rescue 3 of them. The flames didn't exactly burn everybody.
Yep. And so you'll see that very common in the scenario. Eventually, this guy will come out, Gulat, and when he's engaged with you, he has a forced effect that when he attacks, he places a damage token on the dead villagers. So just as soon as he attacks, the dead villagers will go up by, as you see, Grant just increased this by 1 after you resolve its attack and do a shadow card, resolve its attack like normal, but then the longer he's in play, the more villagers he will kill each turn.
He's basically like Chieftain Utak, where Chieftain Utak gained a resource each time he attacks. Gulat places a dead villager each time he attacks and gets stronger that way.
Yep. So you'll see just an encounter to Mondin. Certainly very fun and thematic scenario too. That's kind of why I really enjoyed it, because you have orcs attacking this small Gondorian village, and you're trying to fend off the orcs and save the villagers. Very kind of Middle Earth type quest.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a fun quest when it came out, although be it relatively easy if
I've seen it go south though in a couple of 4-player
oh,
games.
oh, definitely. I mean, when you're playing 2 players, 1 or 2 player, it's relatively straightforward. I mean, you may have a few more dead villagers if you're playing solo, because you may not have enough questing to get through, say, all the burning farmhouses in a turn. You may not have enough attack power to kill Gulat straight away. So you keep constantly adding dead villagers. But generally speaking, in a 2-player game, this one can be relatively easy. In Nightmare, that is completely the opposite. This quest can go south very quickly with Nightmare.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to it actually.
So
But
how far through the Nightmare sets are you then, Ted?
I've actually only played like I've played the core set and like some of the Mirkwood cycle, and then I think some of the I think I can't remember. It's been a long time. I've done like I think most of the Mirkwood cycle and some of the Khazad-dûm cycle, and that's it. So only the first 2. So I have a lot of Nightmare to play through, but I'm kind of working on that project right now, trying to get through some of it.
That is our keywords for the first part. Join us next time where we cover the keywords from the Voice of Isengard and on.
Yeah, pretty much that's it. So hopefully this helped clarify a few things as best we could explain them. But showing you a few examples might help clear things up. So thanks for joining Grant and I on this keyword video from Card Talk. And as always, I love talking about cards, and Grant is...
Just along for the ride.
That's right. Have a good night, everyone.